Well, awesome. Officially, good morning, everyone. It looks like this is going to be a nice, intimate group, which is exciting for today's conversation as we prioritize our own mental health and wellness. So this is the bonus session of the youth mental health, where mentoring and youth mental health meet. For those who don't know me, I'm Michelle Thomas, Director of Training and Program Development with the Mentoring Partnership. We have one more session coming up in this series, and we will talk about that at the end. But I just wanted to do introductions of the team. Again, the Mentoring Partnership came together with the Jewish Healthcare Foundation to offer this series. I'll say it's beyond what I could imagine when we sat down at the table, and I think they have been wonderful thus far, and just feel a privilege to be in the same space with these folks and be able to share this platform and do planning together to ensure that we're doing the best that we can to help support young people, period, but especially coming out of the pandemic and in this time we're all experiencing. So I want to allow the other planning committee to introduce themselves before we get started.
Well, good morning. I am Sophia Duck, the Training and Engagement Manager from the Mentoring Partnership. So excited. We've come so far, and there's so much more to discuss, right? So I'll step aside so we can get to the material here.
I'm Deborah Murdoch with the Jewish Healthcare Foundation. I work on our Teen Mental Health Initiative, and it's been so much fun to explore the intersections around mentoring and mental health these past couple months, and had a lot of really engaging, important conversations. So glad to be with you all this morning.
Hi, everybody. My name is Carol Frazier. I'm a practice transformation specialist at the Pittsburgh Regional Health Initiative, which is the operational arm of the Jewish Healthcare Foundation. And I work with Deborah and Sarah, along with Deborah and Sarah, in the Teen Mental Health program at the Jewish Healthcare Foundation. I'm excited and have been excited about this relationship too, because I think mental health is really at the core of health. And as such, we really need to be thinking about how mental health fits into all of our work every day. And this has been an exciting journey together, and hopefully one that will continue. So let's get to it.
Thanks, Carol. And then before we do the session recap, just a quick shout out to the other members on our team who have helped carry the weight, although they have been silent along the way, but definitely a critical piece in this this puzzle, or this map, if you will. So shout out to Sarah and Kristen from both of our teams, who have just been extremely supportive as we delivered this series. So to recap, for those who weren't here the last session, and all of the sessions are available via the web, the recording and the resources. So if you haven't had a chance to take part of that, please do so. There's tons of great resources. Last session was just amazing, and it was centered around youth voice. And we were able to, one, spend some time with Upstreet Pittsburgh, just to share about a resource, a free resource that's available to youth 12, I would say youth and young adults, 12 to 22. So it's free mental health support. And then we were able to spend a bulk of that time just hearing from young people, and they serve as peer mentors, and just being able to ask them questions about their experience and how adults can help support their mental well-being, both in school and out of school. We ask questions about why they chose to be a peer mentor and show up, for their friends and build relationships with, their peers. But one of the things I want to highlight on this slide, when we asked about what can adults do to support mental health and well-being, and this young person mentioned, don't talk at us, talk with us, listen to us, And what I thought was important here is don't avoid current events, bring them up. And I know sometimes as adults, like the current events are heavy on us. So to make space and bring those up, sometimes we think, it's going to cause further feelings of being uncomfortable or trauma, and they're asking, like, create space for us to talk about this. Let's not act like they're not happening. And I know as a parent, I'm guilty as like turning off the news and like wanting to shut it down and just say, hey, let's let the kids be kids, but they see it in school, they see it, you can't protect them from it. So at least make space for them to talk about it. So I thought that was very it was great that young person brought that up and say, hey, we want to be a part of this conversation, give us space to talk about it. The other thing was mentioned is we need an environment, an every person environment where we feel safe and respected. And that respect, we know, is a two-way street, like all mentoring relationships. So we have to give respect to get respect. So it's important for adults, if we want that respect from young people, that we're modeling that and giving that to them as well. One other thing about the session, the last session is, again, we were talking to the young people about why they were showing up for their peers. And I think it was just obvious that given their personal experience, that they wanted to make sure they were there to be able to provide support and be able to listen without judgment, etc. So again, if you didn't participate, I encourage you to go back and listen to that session. A lot of great takeaways there. That was just a couple. So without further ado, let's dive in today. Super excited to partner for this session with Still Smiling, an organization in residence of Neighborhood Allies. And we have with us today Robin Sheffey and Jasmin Perrier. I'm going to introduce both of them and then turn that over to Robin. So just a little bit about our presenters. Robin, she's the program manager and wellness services at Still Smiling. So she's responsible for providing clinical support to the Black Mental Health Fund. She co-facilitates the Beams to Bridges program. She conducts referral intakes, provides check-ins to community members, providing group and individual and non-formal mental health support. She brings over 20 years of experience in the mental health field, where she has provided drug and alcohol counseling and program management for maternal addiction program for the youth homeless shelter. She is also the sole proprietor of For Wellness, an organization that provides consulting services, training to organizations on mental wellness, psychoeducational classes to the community on mental health, as well as conflict resolution to individuals and groups. She has obtained an undergraduate degree from Duquesne University in political science and holds a MicroMaster in substance abuse and trauma-informed care. She also holds a Master's of Science in Professional Counseling from Carlow University and is a certified clinical trauma professional. Also from Still Smiling is Jasmin Perrier, and she is a graduating senior at the University of Pittsburgh, and actually officially graduated and will have graduation today. So please show her some love in the chat or using your reactions. Such an exciting time to be graduating and spending her morning with us as she's preparing to graduate later today. She will be receiving her degree in psychology with a minors in social work and Spanish, and plans to pursue a career in clinical social work and hopes to, eventually provide therapeutic support services to youth. Over the last couple of years, Jasmin has worked with Still Smiling to help develop their youth programming division. She worked with the youth programming team at Still Smiling to create Still Thriving, which is a youth psychoeducation and coping skills group that launched during the COVID-19 pandemic. And it was aimed to specifically support the needs of Black teenagers. So thank you both for being here. I want to turn it over to Robin. And then if you haven't already, please, by all means, for those who have joined us today, go ahead and introduce yourselves in the chat. But I want to give it over to Robin.
Thank you very much, Michelle. That was some heavy lifting, all these heavy information about individuals. So What I want us to do today, we believe in being as mindful and intentionally as possible. I'm going to ask each of us to sit in a chair with both of our feet planted in front of us. Please don't cross your hands. Don't cross your legs. We want the energy that you have to have a space to illuminate around you and out of you. So as we do this, what I'm going to ask you to do is to don't move your head. I want you to gaze to your left through your eyes, gaze to your right through your eyes. Take your attention of your eyes directly in front of you, gather that information, and I want you to gently lower your eyes or close your eyes if you feel safe enough to do that. Then I want you to visualize all the energy that it took for you to get out of the bed, to put your clothes on, to get you a nibble before you presented yourself in front of us today. Just visualize that energy. What was that like for you? This is your energy. And as you are visualizing this energy, I want you to take recognition into, is it heavy or is it light? And as you're visualizing this energy and you're gathering it, is it a box? Is it a square? Is it jagged? Is it a circle? And as you are visualizing what the content of it is, I want you to breathe in to the count of 3, inhale in, and exhale out to the count of 3. And continue to keep this rhythm, inhaling in to the count of 3, and exhaling out to the count of 3. Continue to hold that breathing pattern. If something else comes up in your mind, it's okay. It's a gentle breathe. You don't have to adjust, you're just breathing. And as you're visualizing this energy that you are, I want you to visualize that energy landing at the tip of your feet. Can you lift it up? Is it too heavy? Is it wet? Is it cold? What is this energy that you bring in here today? And as you're visualizing, lifting the energy, if you can, I want you to just kind of visualize that energy rolling up the front of your legs, hovering at your knees. Is it wet? Is it cold? Visualize that energy coming up to your hip area. Can you move around in it? Is it stiff? Is it poking you? Is it embracing you? Again, as this energy moves up to the front of you, visualize it being right underneath your chin. Does it gag you? Does it allow you the space that you need to breathe with it? What is this energy that is you? And as you hold this energy, if it's containable underneath your chin, I want you just to visualize as you continue to breathe, it coming all the way up to the front of your face, sitting right in your nose, being the center of your head. Just visualize it being right there as you continue to inhale and exhale. And what I want you to do with this energy that you are, I want you to continue to breathe, inhale and exhale to the count of 3. Another inhale and exhale. You're just noticing, seeing what it is. And as you inhale, I want you to visualize when you're starting to push this out, that you can push this energy all the way across the room. So on your last inhale, I want you to pucker your lips and push it as far as you can. And then once you have expelled all of that is you energy, gently open your eyes and return to us. Hopefully that has gathered us to be present for Jasmin as she takes you through an experience.
Thank you so much, Robin. That was very much so needed. Oh my goodness. You didn't hear me, but I was snapping right afterwards. That was my first time doing that mindfulness exercise. So thank you very much.
Welcome.
Well, good morning, everyone. We'll be going through a safety plan workshop today, and you can go ahead to the next slide. So Michelle was super awesome, and she already introduced us. But again, my name is Jasmin. You just heard from Robin, and Deshauna isn't here with us today, but we make up the youth programming team currently at Still Smiling. And I'm really excited to get to work with you all today to have a good conversation around safety planning and mental health. And if you want to reach out to us after this meeting, you can feel free to contact us. Our emails are on the slide, and you'll have access to these slides after the meeting as well. And also, before we get started, I want to encourage everyone to grab something to take notes with, just because we'll actually have a chance to go through the steps of making a safety plan today. And also, maybe throughout the presentation, something will catch your eye and you'll think that you want to remember it for later, which is also great. So you can go ahead to the next slide. So this is the agenda for today. We'll have the icebreaker. We'll talk about mental health. We'll talk about the 8 dimensions of wellness. We'll go over what self-care is and what it looks like for us. And then, like I said, we'll go through the steps of making a safety plan. You can go to the next slide. So for this icebreaker, I'm going to ask everyone to put their responses in the chat. If they feel comfortable, you can feel free to unmute yourself. But I'm going to go through a few questions, and just remember that there are no right or wrong answers. This is just to gauge what everyone's feeling about the words that pop up on the screen. Okay, we're all good? Cool. You can get to the next slide. Go back one. Okay. What is the first thing that comes to mind when you think of the word wellness? So the first thing that comes to mind, put it in the chat. Remember, no right or wrong answers. Okay, balance, health, healthy, harmony, wholeness, okay? Peace, yes. Okay, cool. Taking care of yourself. Rest, wholeness. I'm loving these responses. I'm loving these responses so much because they show that wellness doesn't have to look like one thing. And depending on the person, it'll look different. Happy. Yes, I love that. Happy. Okay, we can go ahead to the next one. But if you have more responses on or more thoughts on wellness, feel free to keep adding them. So, what is the first thing that comes to mind when you think of self-care? Again, no right or wrong answers. Practice, breathing, recharge, love, meditation, prioritizing self, nature, intentional, consistency. I think of me time, being outside. That's a good one, Allison. I've been wanting to get outside more often lately, but I missed the one weekend we had really good weather because I was sick and now it's cold again. But hopefully I'll get to spend more time outdoors because for me, that's a really good way of connecting with nature and centering myself. Intentional peace. Amen. Yes, intentional peace. Taking time to do something you enjoy. Lovely, lovely, lovely. Okay, next slide. What do you usually do when you're stressed out? Oh, my mom. Yes. Make a list. Breathe. Eat ice cream. Pet animals. I have 2 little cats. They bring me very much They do calm me very much whenever I'm stressed out. Breathing and music. Pray and reflect. It's been a while since I've been stressed, but praying and thinking of family. Walk. Yep, to clear your mind. Go outside. Love it, love it. Okay, so keep your responses in mind as we begin talking about mental health, self-care, and what those things specifically look like for you. Oh, also calling a friend. And also just keep in mind that each of these responses looks different for every person. That's really important. And like I said, there was no right or wrong answer for any of these things. Wellness, self-care, our coping skills when we're stressed out, those are things that are very specific to the person. You can go to the next slide. So what is mental health? You can go to the next slide. So mental health includes our emotional, psychological, and social well-being. It affects how we think, how we feel, and how we act. And it also helps us determine how we handle stress, how we relate to others, and how or if we make healthy choices. And some people may hear the phrase mental health and immediately think of mental illnesses or disorders, but I want to point out that while not everyone has a mental illness, everyone does have mental health, just like we all have physical health, right? And it's important to learn about the ways that we can be mentally healthy and well. And this might not be with new information for everyone on the chat, but it's always great to review. You can go to the next slide. So it's important to take care of our mental health because it can help with making our moods better. It can help with reducing our anxiety. It can help us think more clearly. It can improve our relationships, and it can also increase our self-esteem. So I want to take a second and ask, can anyone think of another benefit that isn't on the screen that comes along with taking care of our mental health?
I'd say increased health outcomes.
Yep. So there might be physical health outcomes that help us. You might realize I suddenly don't have back pain as much anymore. Those headaches are going away now that I'm taking care of my mental health. Anyone else? You can unmute yourself or even put it in the chat. Improved sleep. Yeah. Something that comes to mind for me too is that when I take care of my mental health, being a better person, quote unquote. For me, when I think of taking care of my mental health, it also means that I'm being mentally healthy enough so that I can help another person. So like, think about it as, you know, that saying of like, if you're on the airplane, you're supposed to put your mask on before the other person. That's what I feel taking care of my mental health and engaging in self-care to be for me. I can't support those around me if I am not doing well myself, you know. You can go to the next slide. So I want to touch on the concept of wellness since it's connected to mental well-being. So what is wellness? Well, it's an active process of becoming aware of and making choices towards a healthy and fulfilling life. And there are actually 8 dimensions of wellness that overlap and intersect in different ways. And they are emotional, the emotional dimension of wellness, the occupational dimension, intellectual, environmental, financial, social, spiritual, and physical. You can go to the next slide. And like I said, we're going to make sure that we share these slides with you after this meeting, just so that you can have a chance to review and go more in depth into any of the other dimensions of wellness. But today we'll be focusing specifically on the emotional dimension of wellness. And this dimension helps us cope with stress and interpret our feelings and emotions. Taking care of this dimension or taking care of your emotional wellness can help us understand and accept our feelings. And it can also help make us feel more comfortable in our skin. And that encourages this sort of self-autonomy, or this feeling of I have a say of what happens in my life or what I do or how I take care of myself. You can go to the next slide. So, self-care, what is it and what does it look like? You can go to the next slide. Self-care means taking care of yourself so that you can be healthy, you can be well, and you can do all the things that you need and want to accomplish in the day. And like I said before, self-care looks different for everyone. So this is your me time. This is your me time. And it depends on your unique needs, desires, and preferences. I like to think of it as self-care is engaging in activities that make you feel good. So you can go to the next slide. So these are some examples of what self-care might look like. Is there anything on the screen that you may do for self-care? And you can feel free to type it in the chat or unmute yourself. I personally go to therapy, I meditate, I exercise, yoga. Except finances, that's my husband's job. Cool. Yeah, so these are just some examples of what self-care might look like. You can go to the next slide. Meditation. So we base our self-care activities around the things that we can control in our lives. So I want everyone to take a second to think about the question that's on the screen. So what are some things that you can control in your life, and how can you connect them to your self-care routine? So we're going to take a second. Feel free to jot down some notes on whatever you have in front of you, or to think about it personally. And then if you feel comfortable, you can put your response in the chat, or you can unmute yourself and share, or you can do neither. It's up to you. But just to provide an example, I have a flexible schedule, which means that I can control when I choose to exercise and practice meditation throughout the week. And that's really important to me. So I'm able to be intentional about when I do those. So someone said how they respond to information. So scheduling, when, who I say no to, and boundaries. Amen. Yes, boundaries are very important. What I eat, turning off TV and getting sleep, boundaries. Yeah, I wish that I could say that I'm better when it comes to like the amount of time that I'm like on social media, working on that. But it is something that I can control. I have friends who have a bit more discipline than I do, and they delete these apps. They want to be more intentional about how much time they're spending on their phones. So that's also an example. Okay, cool. Thanks for participating in that activity. If you're still thinking about it, feel free to keep on jotting down your response. But yeah, we can move on to the next slide. Sometimes we mix up self-care with self-soothing activities. So what is self-soothing? Well, self-soothing involves activities that provide comfort and distraction in difficult times. So in other words, these are things we do to feel better in the moment when we're going through it. And so some examples of self-soothing are maybe eating your favorite sweets, taking a bubble bath, doing a face mask, going shopping and treating yourself to something nice, watching your favorite series on Netflix or binge watching. It might be playing video games to take your mind off of something. And while self-soothing activities can be a part of what you do for self-care, they shouldn't be all you do for self-care. So in my opinion, self-care as a whole is being mindful of your needs and then taking steps to fulfill those. So some examples on the slide are keeping a gratitude journal. It might be making sure that you eat a balanced diet throughout the week. It might look like planning out your week, writing down a list so that you know what you have to do and when you have to get it done, prioritizing tasks. It might be just sleeping, like knowing that you need that rest and giving you that space or giving yourself that space to actually sleep. You can go to the next slide. So here are some more examples of what self-care can look like. So I'll just go through them. It can look like spending time alone. It can look like putting yourself first. It can look like asking for what you need, setting boundaries, staying at home, saying no, forgiving yourself, taking a step back, or asking for help. And my favorite thing on this slide is asking for help. And I want to take a second and ask everyone, you can respond in the chat and say me, but how many of you would help someone if they asked? It's a lot of people. Okay, cool. Now I want to ask, how many of you actively ask for help when you need it? You can say me in the chat. Thanks for being honest. Yeah. So as you can see in the chat, we're like ready to help someone else, right? But when it comes to asking for help ourselves, there's a bit of hesitance there. But I just want to emphasize that asking for help is also a form of self-care. Like realizing that you don't have to carry the world on your shoulders, realizing that there are people around you who can support you, and then you don't have to do everything alone is a form of self-care. So be honest with yourself if you need that help. Okay, you can go to the next slide.
Wait a minute, Jasmine, can I add something to your self-care, please? That
Absolutely.
We don't do
Yes.
enough of. So central nervous system jarring. Another part of self-care is to hug yourself. Enough of us don't do that. Hugging ourselves is a way of self-soothing that we don't take account of. So please take time just to hug yourself throughout the day to give yourself the grace and the space.
That's so true. I can't think of the last time I hugged myself. I'm gonna have to do that after this. All right, so let's get into making a safety plan. You can go to the next slide. So what is a safety plan? Well, these are plans that we make to help us through difficult times. So everyone has days that are tough to get through, and everyone has days when they need a bit more help, right? And the key to get through these days is to have a plan to guide you through those tough times. And so when you have that plan, that means that you're ready and you know what actions to take to make sure that you can maintain your sense of wellness. So having your own safety plan can help you be more aware of how you're feeling throughout the day, be ready to take care of yourself when you begin to feel down. And it can also help you know exactly what to do and who will be able to help you in those moments of difficulty. So we'll go through the steps together of how to make a safety plan. And as we're breaking things down, you can write in your notes as if you were completing your own safety plan. So then by the end of this meeting, you'll have your own safety plan put together. So the steps of building a safety plan are: first, spot the signs. Second, identify your coping skills. Third, know your social supports. And fourth, seek help from a professional. So I'll break down each of these. You can go to the next slide. So spot the signs. How do you know that you're starting to feel upset, anxious, or depressed? Some people go through a whole day feeling lousy or in a bad mood, and they never really stop to think about how it began or how they could turn things around, right? And so I want us to take a quick moment to, take a quick moment today, and actually a few times a day if you can, to think about how you're doing. You can do a short self-check-in with yourself. And the more you do this, the easier it'll be for you to identify when you're having a bad day and what might be the thing that triggered that day to kind of go sour. And so questions that you can ask yourself are, how does your body feel? What thoughts do you have? How do you act? And so let's take a moment. If you have your notes in front of you, do a quick self-check-in. How are you feeling today? How does your body feel? What kinds of thoughts are you having? We'll give us a couple of seconds to be able to do that. Mm-hmm. So then, mentally feeling good, peaceful, body feeling A1. Cool. So I also want to know, when you do those self-check-ins, you might be able to recognize a pattern when it comes to having like an off day. So I know for me, for example, when I might be like having a bad day, or I might be like going into like a bit of a depression for myself, it usually begins by like multiple days in a row. I'll have headaches and I won't be sure where they come from. I'll be more agitated around people that I usually really enjoy. I might have a harder time focusing on my schoolwork, a harder time like sitting in place. So those are my signs that I know how to spot. And so when I see those things, I try to get my coping skills, which is the next step. So we can go to the next slide. Identifying your coping skills. So in this step, you want to ask yourself, what can you do by yourself to try to calm down? So think back to some of your responses earlier, like while we were doing the icebreaker activity. And think about what comes to mind when you think about like self-care and the types of things you do to make yourself feel better, and the types of activities that you can control in your day-to-day. So what types of things can you do by yourself to try to calm yourself down? And we'll take a second again so you can take some notes. You can write down your response. So some examples for me, or in general, might be doing a hobby that I enjoy. I like making art. So that might look like painting, that might look like writing poetry. It could also look like listening to your favorite music. It could look like planning out your day step by step. Or it could also look like practicing relaxation, which we can do right now. Next slide. Oh, okay. Some people placed some things in the chat. So for some people, coping skills look like engaging in deep breathing, right ahead of it, la. Sitting in the sun, praying, meditating, spending time with kids. Those are really great ones. So now we're gonna take a second to practice a coping skill, which is, in this case, deep breathing. So if you're comfortable, I'll walk you through a deep breathing exercise really quickly. So sit back or lie down in a comfortable position. Close your eyes if you would like to do so. And when you're learning, try to place a hand on your stomach. If you breathe deeply enough, you should notice it rising and falling with each inhalation and each exhalation. Okay, so I'm going to walk you through. Inhale, breathe in slowly through your nose for 4 seconds. 1, 2, 3, 4. Pause. So hold the air in your lungs for 4 seconds. 2, 3, 4. And exhale. Breathe out slowly through your mouth for 6 seconds. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And then repeat. You can practice for at least 2 minutes, but preferably maybe 5 to 10. So we're gonna walk through that for a bit. Let's do that a couple more times. So breathe in, 2, 3, 4, hold, 2, 3, 4, exhale for 6, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Breathe in, 2, 3, 4, hold, 2, 3, 4, exhale, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And those are some activities that you can definitely do on your own. When you're realizing that you're maybe getting stressed out and you want to have an activity to ground yourself in the moment, deep breathing is definitely something that you can carry with you wherever, whenever. And some tips for breathing out could be try puckering your lips as if you're blowing through a straw to slow your exhale. So when you're breathing out for 6, try to puck your lips. And that'll help you exhale more slowly, and that'll calm down your heart. Because when you're stressed, you might notice that your heartbeat is beating really quickly. And some other tips include slow down. So maybe my counting was a bit too fast. If you know for you want to go slower, feel free to do that. It's helpful to count your breaths. So you heard me saying 2, 3, 4. You can also do that in your head. And then, okay, bye Danielle, thanks for joining us. And you can also choose your own times. So on the screen, it's 4 seconds, inhale, 4 seconds, hold, 6 seconds, exhale. You can switch that up, whatever works for you. Maybe you want to do 4 seconds, exhale. There's no right or wrong. All right, next slide. Know your social supports. If you are unable to deal with your distressed mood alone, ask yourself, who are the people you can reach out to for support? And the more the merrier, the more the better. So right now, I want everyone to make a list of the people that you know that you can reach out to, the people that you trust. These are the people that you know will help you feel better in times of crisis. So list their names, and if you can, also their numbers. And I'll give everyone like a minute or so to do that. Okay. So I saw in the chat that someone put like God and Jesus, which is great. Also, you want to make sure that you have like a list of maybe friends or family that you can call on if there's a crisis. And then we can go to the next slide. So seek professional support. If your problem persists, or you ever feel like you might want to hurt yourself, you should definitely reach out to your professional support system. And if you go to the next slide, I've actually included professional resources that you can reach out to. Upstate Pittsburgh, which you all might be familiar with, is an online mental health service for youth and teens, and they actually provide free mental health support for anyone ages 12 to 22. They have a online like chat box that is monitored by counselors, which I found to be really useful. You can also call the Resolve Crisis Services. They have a walk-in center listed on the screen. You can reach out to Still Smiling. Our info is also on the screen. And I wanted to include the number to the Pittsburgh warm line. And so this warm line is not a crisis line, but you can feel free to reach out to that number if you ever want to just talk to someone who understands what it's like to be going through a tough time. Sometimes that's very much all we need, like the space to talk to someone and not be judged. And so you can feel free to call that number. And then on the next slide, you'll see a list of hotlines. And like I said, we're planning on delivering or sharing this PowerPoint with everyone today. And so you'll be able to have this and refer back to this as a resource. And that's all I have for you. Thank you. Any questions? If not, like I said, my contact info is on that first slide along with Robin and Shauna. And I want to just say thank you all for having me today. It's been really great getting to hear your responses and getting to make this safety plan. All right, I'll pass it on to Michelle.
Thank you so much, Jasmine. That was so helpful to start the Friday. I definitely felt different than I did coming in this morning, and your voice it was soothing as well. So just kind of walking through that was very helpful. So I appreciate it. Everybody should have gotten, I believe, if not, we'll put that link in the chat, a copy of a self-plan, so that if you weren't filling that in as Jasmine was going along, that you have a takeaway so that you actually have one. I know it's one thing to talk about self-care, but it's another thing to prioritize it and to do it. And I know if I'm not planning in advance. That was one thing I was guilty of when Jasmin asked, like, what do you have control over? Like, well, I do have control over my schedule, but I normally am guilty of letting my schedule control me. So when you do need to practice that, it's harder to sit back and reflect, because now you're trying to put your plan in place as you're, needing it, versus being able to reflect on, like, who can I call? What do I do? When your mind isn't as clear, you can default back to that plan. So make sure that you do pull that plan. And then as you're working in spaces with young people, this is something that can definitely be modeled for them. Again, if we think about it ahead of time, when we're not so well and it's harder to kind of think through those things, it's better to have something to default back on, to just help you when you're not thinking as clearly as you may on your best day, right? Or a good day, is to have that plan in place. So that link is in the chat. And then I wanted to give space for if Robin, also from Still Smiling, had anything to add with regard to the self-care plan, to stem off of what Jasmin has shared with us.
Thank you, Michelle. And I do. As practitioners, as you all are, working with adolescents and families, you don't do enough, or we don't do enough of self-care. So we are giving you tools for you to implement, because your wellness is way more important than anyone else. As Jasmin said early on, that if you don't put on your life mask of your self-care, you can help no one. This burden that we have out here in this world today is heavy. It truly is. And in that, how you take care of yourself and the information you give to our youth is critical. But in that, can't be expressed enough. Not a day of it, walk and practice of it, so that you have a longevity to make it throughout the day. We cannot continue to help others without realizing that we need to love ourselves all throughout this process, and giving yourself grace around, I know what I know and I know what I don't know. So utilizing the resources that are out there so that you can best help those around you. Don't be a helper that doesn't have flowers on their trees. I want nutrients, and you deserve nutrients. So you root yourself in to your plan. Root yourself in. This is a great opportunity in terms of mentorship. You all are helping our kids out here to become way more individuals than they could ever anticipate. I saw the work that you are doing in this mentorship, and I was knocked over and bowled over. So I'll say this, when I hear youth saying that they don't go to their parents, they go to you. They go to you. So you have a heavy lift in this. So in that heavy lift, please, I can't stress the need to take care of yourselves, be present, be intentional, set your boundaries as you love yourself up.
Thank you so much, Robin. It's just a good reminder, like, you can't pour from an empty tank, for sure. So thank you so much. We do have time if other folks want to come off mute and contribute to the conversation. I know we operate in, different spaces, and you all may have some wonderful things to add to the conversation. So we do have time for that. So I just want to make sure that we respect that time and say, hey, we would love to hear your voices if you have something to share in relation to your safety, your self-care safety plan, and or anything else that lends well to this conversation.
I wanted to ask, has anyone on the call made a safety plan before? Or was this your first time?
I can share. I know I have. I attended like a trauma class, and it was like one of the first things that we did. And I found it really helpful.
I was doing it, but didn't necessarily know that it was called a safety plan. I just learned from experience that from doing this so long, that if you don't take care of yourself, like she said, from still smiling, you can't help who you're trying to help if you're not taking care of yourself. And unfortunately, I had to learn through working through that myself, realizing that just like I was taking time out to help people, that I had to help myself and being intentional about it. I guess that's what it was. I knew that I had to do it, but I wasn't intentional about it. So I had to tell myself that if you're going to continue to do this and not get bared down by what it is that you're doing, you're going to have to be intentional.
Thank you for sharing that. I found for me, I had like a mental safety plan, but I had never really sat down and like thought through each of the steps. Like, who are the people that I'm going to call if I'm in a crisis? Like, realistically, if I'm really going through it and I just want to talk to someone, who am I actually going to call? Never thought through like, what are these actual steps that I know that I can take, that I know work for me, rather than just kind of thinking on the spot, okay, like, what am I going to do? Because sometimes we do that because we have to, but I find for me, I feel comfortable having a plan a lot of the time. And something that also helps me is putting that plan like physically somewhere that I can see, you know? So Michelle said that they're emailing everyone like a copy of a physical like template that you can use. I would advise you, if you can, like print that out, fill it out, and hang it up somewhere where you can see, or like even somewhere that you know that you'll look often, just as a reminder, like these are things that I know that I can do so that I can make sure I maintain my peace.
Thank you so much. I want to respect the pause. I want to just share a little bit about the last session. So this was a bonus session. One of the things when we met with Still Smiling to offer the bonus session was really to prioritize, like we talk about where mentoring and youth mental health meet and the helpers, but recognizing the importance that we have to equip and arm ourselves with the tools we need to continue to be those helpers. And that was kind of missing from the conversation. And when you find out we have those conversations, if you've ever been in a youth mental health first aid training, we talk about it, but it's always last. Like it's always quick. And we wanted to make sure we created space for that. And sometimes these things feel uncomfortable or could come off as like cheesy. It is so important. Like when you're not your best, you're not thinking clearly, and it's hard to default back to like, what do I normally do in this time versus kind of like spin and spiral. So like Jasmin just mentioned, like who am I really going to call? And when you're not thinking clearly, if you have that readily available, that's so helpful. And if we can model that, we normalize that for the young people that we work with, to say, have a plan. It's important to have a plan because, you know, Jasmin talked about like how the mental health is connected. We put those responses in the chat to your physical health, and how Jasmin shared personally, like having headaches, like really thinking about spotting those signs. Sometimes we plow through those signs and we're like, oh, that's it, my stomach's hurt, and that's it. It's, if we stop and pause for a moment, it could be an indication of something else. So if we're able to do that and model that, one, we're replenishing our tank so that we can be those helpers that I essentially feel like the work we do is a calling, that we could do what we've been called to do. And you can't do that if we're not continuing to be diligent to replenish. And it gets hard to stop and think about yourself. So we wanted to make this space for that. So the next session, we do transition back, and we're going to transition back, meaning, right, how do we continue to support young people? And this will be with regard to physical and mental health, specifically related to student athletes. And we planned this last year, but you will just see based on this week why this conversation is important. There's been so much in the news. So we'll have AD 99 Solutions join us, as well as Sophia Lee in that discussion. Sophia is a coach, and I know that this topic is very near and dear to her heart. So we're excited to dive into that conversation in a couple weeks. So we invite you all to please join us then to kind of wrap up this series, but the conversation won't stop there. Please, we've been sending out an evaluation. Please let us know what else may be happening on the ground so we can continue to work with experts like Still Smiling and Upstreet to help bring up the information, and the ET3 program, all who are doing great work as it pertains to the mental health and well-being of the young people we work with. We're all continuing to learn and be in this space, and we want to work collectively and collaboratively together, because that's part of the mental wellness, right? We know who to turn to support each other. So we'll keep those conversations going, but there's still time to register for that session. I think it's May 13th, right? Group, May 13th. So I ask that you all, if you're interested, please register or please spread the word. And then before we wrap up, I just want to look to the team to see if Deborah, Carol, Sophia had anything to add.
Just echoing your thanks to Jasmin and Robin for being here with us and taking the time. That was a really great way to start a Friday morning.
It was a great way to start the morning. And I think one of the things that strikes me is, when we get to those places and when youth get to those places, they and we often feel like there's not much that we can control. And when you really sit back and think about what can I control, there are more things that help us really feel more in control of our lives. That becomes really important. So thank you for that too.
Well,
I have
go
a
ahead.
question. I just have a question. So I'm not sure, but has the Mentoring Partnership done a youth symposium where there is a youth panel that has set up and what they see as what they need, instead of us saying that, hey, this is what's going on, this is how we're directing you? Has there been a lead such as that?
So we took a stab at that with the last session as best as possible, is to really make space for young people and thinking about, again, asking the question, how can adults support your mental health and well-being? And then with that group that was on the panel, they were peer mentors. So we asked them, like, what made you decide to be a peer mentor? What does that look like for you? How do you help peers? So that was the last session. As you can imagine, it was small. It's like, and working with programs to get young people to the table. And actually one young person, so grateful for her, was like still in school, like agreed to sign up, was like the very tail end of the school day. So being mindful of how we can create that space and hear from more youth voice. But last session was centered around that. Would love to keep those opportunities going. And I know Deborah with the PA Youth Advocacy Network really works to also, collect youth voice, because we don't know, right? We need to hear from them to know what's needed. So did I miss anything, guys? Anything to add there? So you could look back at that series, but I know Deshauna worked with her dissertation is going to be very telling with that as well. Deshauna, if you all remember when we led the call, as a part of the Still Smiling team. And I know that dissertation work is going to be made available soon. I think there may be something coming out of Still Smiling. I don't want to
It is.
Yeah,
okay.
I'm actually like the research assistant for that project. We're very much still collecting survey responses. So if you have any youth that you think would be interested in participating in the survey, we also give $15 incentive to anyone who takes it. please send them our way. Like I said, my email's on the slide. We're very much still looking for folks to take the survey, ages 14 to 25. So if you have any ideas, if you might be interested, definitely reach out to us. The survey, just to give you like a little overview, is essentially on mental health literacy, and that is a way of understanding the knowledge and beliefs that young people have around mental health and treatment methods. And we're specifically interested in understanding what Black youth in Allegheny County know and feel about mental health and illnesses. And then from there, hopefully we can use that information to aid in or to inform future programming specifically tailored to the needs of Black youth. And so that's the goal. Like I said, if you know anyone who might be interested, please send them my way and Deshauna's way. And hopefully, well, the plan is to be done with the data wrap up and everything, and to get that out to the partners by June, July. So stay tuned.
Yeah, definitely stay tuned, because Still Smiling is implementing their Building the Bridges Still Thriving program. So that'll be a component of it.
And Jasmine, if you get us a little bit of information, we could probably put that in the follow-up so folks know how to, access to refer young people to that assessment.
Absolutely, absolutely. I'll send that over.
Perfect. Well, if no one has anything else to add, we'll give you time back to your day. So maybe we'll do so to prioritize you. So we thank you for being here. Look for the follow-up, and we hope to see you at the final session in May. Thank you again, Jasmine and Robin.
Bye, everyone. Have a good day.
Thank you.
Thank you.